Shabbat Shalom. Did you hear anybody? I don't know. Shabbat Shalom? Wonderful. So good to have you all here and to be able to join together on this Shabbat that is Memoir Shabbat, which is going to be such a beautiful opportunity to hear stories, connect with our past, our present, and also hopefully what will inspire the Jewish future. We begin on page 10s with 10, just the one page 10, with Hine Matov Umanayim. Hine Matov Umanayim Shevet Anu Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Umanayim Shevet Anu Gam Yachad. Hine Matov Shevet Anu Gam Yachad. You can use anu or achim. Hine matov umanayim shevet anu gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim shevet anu gam yachad. Hine matov shevet anu gam yachad. Shevet anu gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim shevet anu gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad.
How good it is to be together. Truly, how good it is to be together on this particular Shabbat as winter begins to fall upon Seattle. Brachim habaim, we say blessings and welcome to all of you who are here, all of you who are at home. I am Rabbi Ruth Slotnick. I'm joined by Rabbi Dana Benson. We are so grateful for our incredible musical professionals, Andy, Dawn and Wendy and Marissa, who we are so grateful that you'll be bringing the music, not just of memory, but of meaning to this evening. And we are also joined by Marilyn Layton, the woman, the legend, the myth. And the laughter means that some of you know more than I know. That's all. And so, Marilyn, we're so grateful to you for your class we'll talk more about. Because on this Shabbat, we're going to actually lift up something we've talked about already today as a community. We're going to lift up memory and memoir on this Shabbat. But more important than that, we want to make sure that we create a sense of Shabbat, a sense of knowing that we belong and we're connected. So first, we're going to connect to our friends who may not be with us here physically. There's the camera. We're going to say Shabbat Shalom nice and loud. Can we say Shabbat Shalom?
Shabbat Shalom.
And what you just heard was them saying, you heard that, right? I did. I did too. And so now that we said Shabbat Shalom to everyone there, let's say Shabbat Shalom to those around us. And if you see someone you don't know, please introduce yourself. We have some new members here tonight. So let's check out.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I love this sound, the sound of people getting to talk and greet each other. Beautiful thing. And I encourage you to continue that as well after the service, to continue getting to know each other and talking to each other and welcoming each other. Abraham Joshua Heschel said that all prayer starts from a place of gratitude, especially on Shabbat. And so too do we acknowledge and honor that on this Shabbat. It is part of our custom here at Temple Beth Am to always bring gratitude for our ancestry, for our history, as we are tonight, past, present, and also, of course, encouraging how that will impact the future. In that vein, we acknowledge that we are on indigenous land that was historically of the coastal Salish tribes as part of our ongoing relationship to those indigenous communities here in the Seattle area. We continue to offer a donation to the Indians of All Tribes Foundation. Sorry, I've done that a number of times, and tonight I just couldn't get it out right. The Indians of All Tribes Foundation. If you have any more questions about that, please let us know. But we're grateful to have you all here in this space.
Thank you, Rabbi Dana. And so, as I mentioned before, this is Memoir Shabbat. What we mean by that is we acknowledge something, and I feel like I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say what I know many of us, not all of us, but many of us are thinking this evening, which is this is our first Shabbat without Henry Butler and Olga Butler. Henry and Olga were pillars of our community. Henry died this week at 102. And earlier today, we paid homage to his life, and we talked about how important memory, keeping alive the memory of our ancestors was to Henry. And I made a suggestion that I think may be the greatest contribution, but that may be a hyperbole, but maybe the greatest contribution to humanity that the Jewish people have offered is the idea of sanctifying memory. How important it is to transform what happened into stories that can be remembered. That is a Jewish sacred act. And so that's what we're celebrating this evening. With that, I am so grateful to invite Marilyn Layton, who is my friend, my teacher, and I know for so many of you who are here today has been your friend and your teacher in helping us transform our stories into the sacred narrative that becomes memory. And of course, Marilyn's beloved Dick was, the two together were also in their own day pillars and leaders of our community. We are so grateful to have Marilyn here tonight. And we want to invite Ron Maxwell to join Marilyn in lighting the candles of Shabbat. And Marilyn, you'll notice, will be lighting 3 candles, as we have done each week since October 7th. We are so very grateful that some hostages have been returned home in safety to their families. We're lighting the 3rd candle for until all of the hostages have been returned home in safety. Page 2 in our prayer books.
Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen.
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 Thank you.
I just want to say, dear God, on this Friday night, it is a great joy to have each of you here and to be able to give you my writer's work, and they will be giving it to you themselves. So it's an honor, and we have a tremendous lot of fun when we write. sometimes.
So thank you. So Ron, I'll invite you to have your seat, and Marilyn, your seat there, and Rabbi Dana.
We're going to continue our service this evening on page 20 with words of Lechad Odi. And the words of Lechad Odi are actually so appropriate for this particular Shabbat evening. They help us tell our story in a number of different ways, highlighting different moments in the Jewish narrative. And specifically, in the very first verse, reminding us both to guard and remember, Zachor, et HaShabbat. Join with us. Page 20. Ya la 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 Lechad Odi. Ya la 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 likrat kala. Ya la 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 pnei Shabbat. Pnei Shabbat nekavela. Ya la 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 Lechad Odi. Ya la 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 likrat kala. Ya la 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 pnei Shabbat. Pnei Shabbat nekavela. Shamor וזכור בדיבור אחד השמיענו אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד לשם ולתפארת ולתחילה. יא לה לה, יא לה 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 Lechad Odi. יא לה 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 לקראת כלה. יא לה 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 פני שבת. פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 2. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. יא לה לה, יא לה 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 Lechad Odi. יא לה 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 לקראת כלה. יא לה 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 פני שבת. פני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. יא לה לה, יא לה 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 Lechad Odi. יא לה 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 לקראת כלה. יא לה 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 פני שבת. פני שבת נקבלה. Please rise and face the entrance if it is your custom as we welcome Shabbat. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה וצהלה תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה da da, ya la 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 la, lecha dodi. Ya la 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 la, likrat kala. Ya la 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 la, pnei Shabbat, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Ya la 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 la, lecha dodi. Ya la 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 la, likrat kala. Ya la 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 la, pnei Shabbat, pnei Shabbat nekabela.
Please remain standing as we continue the Baruch Hu.
Yai da dai 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 dai. Yai da dai 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 dai. Yai da dai 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 dai. Yai da dai 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 dai. Yai da dai 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 dai. Yai dai dai. Yai da dai 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 dai. Yai da dai 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 dai. Yai da dai 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 dai. Yai dai dai. Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach. Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Please be seated. That is everyone except you, Marilyn, because I have the great honor now of inviting up Marilyn Layton, who has been teaching a memoir writing class for almost since 1990. That is a long time, which is amazing. So the memory goes far back, and really, in addition to being a teacher in our community, Marilyn is a sustainer, a friend, and really a beloved of so many of us. I had intended to bring this big bag that had an octopus on it, I think it was my very first day in Seattle, Marilyn came filled with goodies from Temple Beth Am for my family. And so from my family to yours, we remain ever grateful to you, Marilyn Layton.
And all of us to you, Rabbi. Yes, yes. Good evening and welcome. Before we begin, I just want to note the loss that this congregation has suffered in Henry Butler, who lived to be 102 and whose service was this morning. Absolutely fantastic man. And we were all blessed by his life and many years. And his wife, Olga. Together, they were an incredible pair. Many of us spend great amounts of time figuring out what among our accumulations should be left to this family member or that friend. Seldom do our words make it to the most important legacy of all, the times of our lives that encapsulate our most deeply remembered moments. Writing often means rediscovering those times that have resided quietly in some forgotten space in our lives. Writing our memoirs allows us to explore such times together and to share them, should we wish, tonight in the presence of our congregation. And so we celebrate Memoir Shabbat. I love its new name. And the legacies we all carry to the present, often so long forgotten in our past. As facilitator of this incredible group, I am often touched beyond tears by the ways in which our writers turn their work into art. 6 members of our class will read from their work tonight. I have been assured that a little extra length in this service will not be a problem for our congregation. A warm welcome to everyone here, and a hope that you will be inspired to put pen to paper and to discover what's there. Welcome. So our first reader is Mr. Larry Katz. I don't know why I called you Mr., but it just...
This is called Hanukkah Harry. 'Tis a season. 'Tis a season for mostly everyone, assuming that everyone else celebrates Christmas. Once I was going back to the office after lunch, and a coworker with whom I had a casual acquaintance got on the elevator with me. After we said hi, there was a silence at first, because she had some shopping bags, and I knew that Christmas was the only topic to speak about. She couldn't stand silence, and finally asked if I had done all my Christmas shopping. I responded that I celebrated Hanukkah, which was already over, and did not celebrate Christmas. She looked quite surprised, and after a moment's silence, she asked, "Not even a little?" And then there was a time that Diana and I took our twin 5-year-old boys to Chinook's at Fisherman's Terminal for brunch. Diana took the kids outside while I was paying the bill. After I left the restaurant, I saw they were across a parking lot in front of some stores, and my wife and children were having an animated conversation with a great-looking Santa Claus, resplendent in red outfit, white beard, and granny glasses. Now, we always celebrated Hanukkah with our kids and never did anything at all for Christmas. This was the kids' very first personal interaction with St. Nick. When I approached, Ethan and Jesse were staring up at Santa with wide-eyed wonder. Turns out that while I was paying the bill, Santa approached my family and asked the kids what they wanted for Christmas. After a stunned silence, Ethan blurted out, "We don't celebrate Christmas, we're Jewish." Santa didn't miss a beat. He said that was okay. He was good friends with Hanukkah Harry, who we had never heard of. And if the kids told him what they wanted, Santa would certainly let Hanukkah Harry know. Now, Hanukkah was just a few days away, and we had already gotten them the presents. While Santa was speaking about Hanukkah Harry, Diana, who was behind the kids, was gesticulating wildly to try to get Santa to stop speaking about other gifts. She waved her hands, made the cutting gesture across her throat to stop the conversation, all to no avail. After Santa asked what they wanted, Ethan, after a long, awkward silence, said he wanted a train video. Jesse was too astonished to come up with anything. After we got home, Diana, trying to get it in time for Hanukkah, called up virtually every toy, book, and video store in Seattle, with no luck. She finally ordered it on the internet. It came in February. Ethan, fortunately, forgot that he asked Santa for that and was perfectly content with what he received for Hanukkah. As a sidebar, around the same time a year or so before this took place, we were driving with the kids. Ethan asked how Santa knew which chimneys to go down. Diana facetiously whispered to me that Santa skipped the houses with blood on the door frames. Ethan heard that and exclaimed indignantly that the blood was for Passover, not Hanukkah. We were proud that his Jewish education had taken root.
Thank you, Larry. The history of our class, as you heard, began with Beth Weisberg's pushing me into this job, which was a job at that time. Now it's a privilege. And so we remember Beth tonight for her good ideas. She saw the potential in our congregation. So our next reader is Gail Rosenberg. And most of you are just familiar with Gail as part of the beautiful choir. Tonight, she's our reader.
Just back from adventures in Australia. So, anyway, my piece is entitled Along for the Ride. We moved to Seattle in the summer of 1974, driving across the country in my husband's yellow Corolla. We had begun our journey in Atlanta right after my finishing graduate school and after saying goodbye to my in-laws. Then we traveled up the coast to my family's home in Massachusetts to say goodbye to them before heading west. Now, how had it come to pass that a girl who viewed herself as a proud East Coaster, who had never been farther west than upstate New York, was traveling sight unseen and without a job to the Pacific Northwest? How did that girl, who believed that Seattle was a frontier town and that she was probably never going to find a decent clothing store ever again, find herself driving a stick shift for the first time in her life through states she had never thought about before, like North Dakota and Iowa? Well, the answer was simple. It was her husband's fault. From the moment I met him at a party in Atlanta, he waxed poetic about Seattle, a city he had lived in while clerking for a judge after law school. He had tried living in his hometown of Atlanta, but the siren call of that Northwest city was too loud. There was never any doubt that if he and I became a couple, we would head west. Adjusting to Seattle was hard. It was difficult finding work. It wasn't easy to meet people or make friends. I was scared and miserable. Over time, we both found jobs. Mine was in Tacoma, though, which was a long commute. But luckily, another new coworker, Jean, also lived in Seattle, and we decided to carpool. Jean was another relatively new Seattle transplant, had also come because her husband wanted to live here, and lo and behold, she was also miserable. Oh, we had a fine old time complaining about the Seattle freeze, about our respective husbands' terrible taste in cities, and about their lack of understanding our misery. In the universe of complainers, we were first class. Jean and I shared the belief that our husbands had made the decision of where to live for us, and we were righteously indignant about it. My belief remained firm even as we became more a part of the Seattle community, We had kids, joined a synagogue, were active in schools, and developed close friendships. And still I blamed my husband. Right up until that moment when a new thought struck me. I had participated in the decision to move here. I had chosen to comply. It had never occurred to me at the time to ask myself what I thought, what I needed, or even under what circumstances I would be willing to move to a new part of the country. Once I realized how complicit I was, my complaining and blaming stopped. Now, I shared this shocking news with my husband that I now saw our decision-making as a joint responsibility, and I also realized why I had felt so justified in believing that it was my husband's fault. It was easier to focus on him rather than face the reason for my automatic compliance. I was young and afraid that if I disagreed with something that was so important to him, he would leave. In our discussion, he of course indicated that that would not have been the case, that he would have welcomed and considered my point of view, hopefully. But he had been young too, and hadn't thought to seek out in more depth whether I was having any misgivings. Old beliefs and coping patterns die hard. I'd like to think that it was just maturity and life experience that caused my sudden shift in viewpoint. But thanks to that shift, the case of forced to live in Seattle was fully resolved.
These stories that conjure past experiences are so powerful. And we're reminded that the root zachar, to remember, is the most common command in the Torah. It's used 169 times. Memory is so central to being Jewish. And I think it's because in the particular descriptions of each of our memories, we connect with the universal oneness of which we're all a part. We continue now with our song for that oneness, the Shema. It's on pages 34 and 35. Please remain seated or rise as is your custom.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. You may be seated. We continue on page 36 with our words of love and action, the Ve'ahavta. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום הלבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. It's my honor and pleasure to invite Marilyn back up to introduce our next set of guests to share with us this evening.
It is my pleasure to introduce my self-appointed assistant, Puddin' Cox. She's been a great help.
My piece is called I Was a Jew in Ada, Oklahoma. I remember the trips down the road to Temple in the 1960s, the signs, the people, the warmth. Daddy and Bill Gluckman read the Burma Shave signs down the aging Oklahoma road to Ardmore on the way to Sunday morning religious school. Grandpa knows it ain't too late. He's gone to get some widow bait, Burma Shave. We drove 60 miles. We drove 60 miles on a winding road to Temple Emeth to study for confirmation, a challenge to make us think. What must a Jew believe? Is there a God? What is God like? Why do people suffer? Why pray? Our books were filled with philosophers, rabbis, great thinkers of the ages, right here off Route 3, not far from Pauls Valley, Oklahoma. We read each marker on the roadside, faded, small, rectangular signs shouted out slogans from their whitewashed posts. Each fading sign, a line from a stanza that required the writer to read very quickly. These signs we gladly dedicate to men who've had no date of late, Burma Shave. Giggling, laughing, singing, I taunted my younger brother, Mikey. Jenny Lou Gluckman and I made plans and talked boys. We were generally full of ourselves. Dolph Brown, my daddy, with his beaming smile, sometimes told us stories. I usually got carsick. We made many stops along the side of the road so I could decide how really sick I was. outside Sulphur, Oklahoma, on the way to Temple, we gazed at the last remaining live buffaloes in southern Oklahoma. Noble behemoths with curly mud-colored hair, sad, round, chocolate, swimming pool eyes. Their gentle nature made me cry. And another faded sign flickered by. The big blue tubes, just like Louise. You get a thrill from every squeeze. Burma shave. Throughout the southeastern part of the state lived a few Jewish families. The Pinskers in Shawnee, the Franks in Kanawha, the Cohens in Wewoka, the Kahns, the Morans, and the Trachtenbergs in Seminole, the Peppers in Chickasha, and the Browns, the Gluckmans, the Pollocks, and the Katz in Ada. After a lot of planning and hard work by all of the families, we broke ground on our new synagogue. It was to be named the Hebrew Center. Located in Seminole, it was just a simple cinder block structure. It had a large room for the sanctuary, a kitchen, and several classrooms. The decor was Spartan, but it was all ours. This was to be our next Jewish learning experience after confirmation. We took classes of Jewish ethics, biblical history, and Hebrew. Jewish college students from the University of Oklahoma drove over on Sundays to teach us. Bald, round-bellied Abe Pinsker taught the youngest ones. I loved ethics the best. Our book, The Still Small Voice, a friendly but serious blue hardcover with white lettering set on the silhouette of a black menorah. Each chapter, a story with a dilemma, a mystery to solve. Each chapter, a clue offering moral insights from Torah or rabbinic literature. We had learned in those small classrooms at the Hebrew Center in Seminole that Judaism wasn't just a religion with tradition and the Ten Commandments, but it was a way of life. I learned that to be Jewish, I had to be a good person. At home, school, on the tennis court, at synagogue, and everywhere. My pubescent brain completed some important circle and connected all of my Jewish feelings in my non-Jewish world. The trip back home from Sunday school was a trip home to my mother, Sylvia. The spicy tomato smells that greeted our noses as we leaped out of Daddy's car just as we stopped in the garage caressed our empty bellies. Mom, we're home. Wide open arms, smiles, clean, crisp apron, and a table set for returning scholars and a dutiful dad. Home wrapped snugly around me. My request was always my mother's special spaghetti and meatballs. An important element of the complete Sunday school experience was the anticipation, longing, mouth-watering, dreaming of returning to my mother's kitchen. We learned our Hebrew, ethics, and history and developed a special link to our heritage, but somehow, to this day, a hot steaming plate of my mother's spaghetti and meatballs is always a spiritual experience, filled with hugs from home. And in the spirit of Burma shave, spaghetti and meatballs was another aroma that made me feel Jewish in Ada, Oklahoma.
We are offering a Temple Beth Am tour next summer to Ada, Oklahoma. led by my assistant, Puddin. We might have to go to Iowa for the Burma shave. All right. Oh, I could hear these essays over and over again. Our fourth contributor is Beryl Schulman. Beryl, where are you? Yes, here she comes. I want to say that from the years I've taught, my classes, my class here at Beth Am has always had students in it who were older, considerably older than I. This group, so wonderfully assembled, is younger. And I love it. It's great, but I have had to adjust my history. And I am just enjoying each person. Beryl.
One life transition, the sofa bed. In my family photo albums, which span 38 years, there's one standout constant, the 76-inch taupe brown sofa bed, which first climbed to the living room of our third-floor condo and soon after relocated to its permanent place opposite the TV in the family room of our newly purchased Cape Cod. The photos attest to its important place in our lives, with images of infants nursing, children converting its cushions to forts, and the family hosting informal gatherings. Every few months, when the grandparents visited, the sofa stretched out to expose the mattress, under which Pop-Pop slid 2 pieces of plywood that he'd hinged together for easier handling and storage. All this flashes before my eyes now while I watch 2 1-800-GOT-JUNK employees wrestle the sofa bed out the French doors, down the stairs, and onto the truck. Sentimentality takes hold of me, seeing the sofa bed, forlornly vertical, its innards array, and I rush to confirm that the truck's destination will be a donation site rather than the dump. The sofa bed was our first furniture purchase. Sitting with a salesperson at the Bon Marché, we selected a quality Simmons, customized with a durable, tightly woven, stain-resistant, soft-to-the-touch fabric of neutral colors. Upon its delivery, shortly before Sean's birth, we stared at an off-white sofa in disbelief. Where was the sensibly darker fabric we'd ordered in anticipation of our firstborn child? Fortunately, the bond took full responsibility and allowed us to keep this sofa temporarily. The correct one was delivered some weeks later and proved indeed to be extremely durable. Weeknights during our child-raising years, household tasks, the children, and preparing for work the next day kept me busy. It was not I who occupied the cushion directly opposite the TV and who was master of the remote. On rare occasions, when I was home alone in the middle of the day, I experienced the somewhat guilty pleasure of sitting on the sofa and watching TV with nothing but calm surrounding me. But I didn't always feel an emotional connection with this piece of furniture. My relationship with the sofa bed became closer, more intense, and at the same time, more conflicted once I'd faced an empty nest and divorce in rapid succession. On my own, I took to eating dinners in front of the TV, carefully staking out the legs of the TV tray to avoid the narrow crevices between cushions and balancing any beverage on the ample flat arms of the sofa. I looked forward to sinking down and watching something light on TV to divert my attention from troubling matters. The sofa became a safe place to retreat. I piled throw pillows on its back above my shoulders to create support for my head. I placed flat cushions behind my back to decrease the depth of the seat. I inserted thin chair pads alternately under and on top of the sofa cushions, trying to level out the seat. And I swapped sofa seat cushions in search of the firmest one. Despite my best efforts, comfort eluded me. After 10 years of cushion interventions, I faced the fact that this sofa was not comfortable. The recognition, however delayed, and nothing in my home was comfortable, and quite astoundingly that I could do something about that, spurred me into action. I set my sights on a chair made by the Norwegian company Stressless, which promises to construct with the human body in mind and offers chairs size small, medium, and large. Hours of chair sitting later, I chose one with an ottoman that happened to be on sale but would need to be shipped from Norway. In the meanwhile, I shopped for a love seat to pair with the chair. Having watched the 1-800-GOT junk truck depart, I inspect and clean the former site of the sofa bed. The room feels delightfully light and open, unburdened of its solid, boxy tenant that had served as best it could, but had been a relic of a simply making do time. Now the unfamiliar empty space surrounding me happily anticipates the arrival of my new love seat next week and a truly comfortable chair by November.
We continue now, not with a couch or with the bar mache of advertisement, but rather with the words of the Amidah. Please join us on page 46. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up our lips that our mouths may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Koneh HaKol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah Rav Le'oshia, Mashiv HaRuach, U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofech Olim, Umatir Hasurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Micha Mocha Baal Gevurot, Umidom Elach, Melech Memit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש בשמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We'll continue with the rest of the Amidah in silence, maybe through the words of our ancestors, through page 62, or with the still small voice within. And we'll come out of that silence with beautiful music of memory.
We reach back in time to another place, another language, and I ask you to gather your song sheet and sing with us. Hoben mir anigendo in Naches und in Frieden, in Naches und in Frieden. Singen mir es, klingt es als euch schön. Das hat noch gesungen, die Bobbe mit den Seiden, die Bobbe mit den Seiden. Wenn sie seinen Kindern noch gewähnt, oi, 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 ot. Azoi, je wieder nigen klingt das Ende. Azafrele, singsche Kinderrot. Azoi, je wieder nigen klingt das Ende. Azafrele, lo mer allein. Hoben mir an nigende, singen wir zusammen. We sing it all together. Singen mir es, klingt es als euch schön. Das hat noch gesungen, der Tate mit der Mammen, der Tate mit der Mammen. Wenn sie seinen Kindern noch gewähnt, oi, 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 ot. Azoi, je wieder nigen klingt das Ende. Azafrele, singsche Kinderrot. Azoi, je wieder nigen klingt das Ende. Azafrele, lo mer allein. Hoben mir an nigendo in Masel und im Broche. In Masel und im Broche, singen mir es, klingt es als euch schön. das hat noch gesungen, die ganze Mischpoche, die ganze Mischpoche. Wenn sie seinen Kindern noch gewinnt, oi, 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 oi. Also, je wieder nigen klingt das in der Asa freilich singt sie Kinderrot. Also, je wieder nigen klingt das in der Asa freilich wo mir alle gehen. Oi, 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 da-da-dai, ya-da-dai, da-da-dai, 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 ai, da-da-dai, ya-da-dai, da-da-dai, 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 ya-da-dai, da-da-dai, 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 as a freilich lo mir alle gehen.
Music heals. Doesn't. Thank you so much. Hearing those beautiful voices, intergenerational, amazing, amazing. And hearing these voices of memory, amazing, amazing. And we know that part of what heals is just to name what is real. And for some of us who walk through the doors of this sanctuary this evening, we're in pain and in need of healing, or someone we love is in pain and in need of healing, or our hearts are bleeding for the war-torn places across the earth, especially in our homeland of Eretz Yisrael. And so we take a moment always, even on a night of memory like this, to share a prayer for healing. So as I look around, everyone who's gathered here, I invite you to say out loud the name of anyone you're thinking of, and at home we hope you'll say whomever you're thinking of as well. Baruch ben Chaim v'Sara. For all of those we've named out loud and anyone we hold in our hearts, we continue with our prayer for healing, the Mishaberach.
The words will be on a slide. Mishaberach Avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak veYaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel veLeahu Yevarech veYirapeh et hacholim Mishaberach Avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak veYaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel veLeahu Yevarech veYirapeh et hacholim El narfan ala El narfan ala El narfan ala El narfan ala Mishaberach Avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak veYaakov Sarah את החולים, הוא יברך וירפא את החולים.
May each and every one know a full and speedy recovery of body and soul. And so these snippets of memory have been so beautiful, and we thank every reader who has read so far in whatever dialect you may be reading in. And we're so grateful that we have more, but we know like the secret magic sauce between all the memories is Marilyn Layton. And so Marilyn's going to introduce the next two speakers.
It's me again. And our next speaker, we hope, is Dennis Glober, who resides in California. And he has been with me since the beginning of our time together in 1990. I remember when he and his wife stopped me in the parking lot to ask whether they could join. And where do I find Dennis?
Dennis is ready for us.
Okay. Dennis, where are you?
Good evening, and Shabbat Shalom to everybody. It's so good to be back at Temple Beth Am, even though I'm more than 1,000 miles away. But my association with Temple Beth Am goes back to 1980. And my son Harry was married at Temple Beth Am. Yvette and I were married here. A grandson has bar mitzvah here. And Rabbis Hirsch and Mirel were very attentive to my late wife Ruth, so that my association with Temple Beth Am has never really ceased. So, thank you for having me again. The piece I want to read is called Reading from Right to Left, and it's included in my book, in my anecdotage, published by Amazon, and Reading from Right to Left. A short while ago, I was in Paris. More specifically, I was wandering joyfully on the banks of the River Seine. Even more specifically, I was glorying in the atmosphere of the left bank, the rive gauche. And not for the first time, I was led to ponder how the innocent French word for left, gauche, has become the far from innocent English word gauche, implying clumsy, inept, ill at ease. It's a phenomenon in many languages that left is not just the opposite of right, but is inherently inferior. Just as gauche has that familiar deprecatory meaning in English, so does the French word droit for right have its admirable English derivative adroit, implying skill, accomplishment, capability. Go back to the original Latin words. Right in Latin is dexter, and we all know how desirable is the attribute of dexterity in any endeavor. The Latin word for left is sinister, and is there a less appealing or more threatening word in the English language than sinister? In German, the word for left, linkisch, has come to mean awkward. In Greek, left-handed skaios has the connotation of ill-omened. In Mandarin Chinese, the word for left zhuo has come to mean out of accord or improper, and zhuo dao, meaning literally left path, stands for immoral or illegal means. The Yiddish language, too, is particularly rich in its negative allusions to the word for left, linker. Thus, linke schere is colloquial for stolen goods. Linkerliebe connotes an illicit love affair. Linker geld is counterfeit money, and aufstehen auf linker Seite means you got up on the wrong side of the bed, and all that implies. The Bible generally, and Christianity in particular, are heavily biased towards the right hand. The psalmist calls for the right hand, not the left, to forget her cunning if I forget thee, O Jerusalem. The right hand of the Lord is exalted, and it is the right hand that deals leniently. It is the right hand that makes the sign of the cross, and it is those at Christ's right hand who would inherit the kingdom of God. The idea that right is simply better than left pervades our language. All's right with the world, we're moving right along. I'll be right with you, all right? You know I'm right. Contrast all that with the poor folk who have been left behind to chew on leftovers. Who wants to receive a left-handed compliment? Why, the very idea comes out of left field. Some 90 years ago, when my eldest brother was of an age to begin learning to write, his natural left-handedness was subjected to vigorous correction in the mistaken belief that its built-in inferiority would be a lifelong disadvantage. Fortunately, those days are long past, and left-handedness is obviously no handicap in anybody's life. So shed no tears for Ichiro Suzuki, or Phil Mickelson, or Rafael Nadal, or John McEnroe. Interestingly, left-handedness seems to be a positive asset in certain highly skilled activities, such as computer science. Not only was Alan Turing, the father of computer science, a left-hander, but so is Bill Gates, and also 4 of the 5 designers of the original Macintosh computer. And reputedly, 1 in 4 NASA astronauts is a lefty. That's a disproportionately high percentage. And let's not forget that Harry S. Truman, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama are just some of the many lefties who made it right to the top. As a born and bred right-hander, why, you may ask, do I harp on this topic? Could I be a closet lefty? No, perhaps it's because I just want to show my heart's in the right place on the left. After all, even lefties are covered by the Bill of Rights. Thank you.
As I said, Dennis has been with our class from the beginning, and he is the reason that we don't meet in person now, because we don't want to be without him. So you can understand why not. He is veering toward 97, I believe, and he has an intelligence that I would wish I could have just a little piece of. So thank you, Dennis. And our last speaker is Mark Mayo. Hi, Mark. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. What Marilyn didn't tell you about Dennis is that Marilyn gives us prompts, and a week or so ahead we get a prompt, and some of us follow it sometimes, some of us follow it never. And if you don't follow the prompt, it is called the Glauber auction, because apparently Dennis has never followed the prompt. And
I want to correct you, Mark. He followed them
twice. I apologize. He's followed them twice. Thank you. Yeah. And I followed them once, and this is when I once followed a prompt. Marilyn had asked us to write about a prayer or something like that that had some effect on us, and so I wrote this. Days pass, years vanish, and we walk sightless amongst miracles. How filled with awe is this place, and we do not know it. It's paraphrased from the Mishkan Tefillah. We say it during the Amidah. You must be one of the wonders, God's own creations. Natalie Merchant from 10,000 Maniacs. There are prayers in the Friday night service that are a soft Nerf arrow shot to my heart. Days pass and we walk sightless amongst the miracles, summons me to open my heart through my eyes, ears, sense of taste, sense of smell, and the gift of touch to live and share all the miracles around us. There are the obvious wonders, walking on a mountain path, the hoodoos of Bryce Canyon and thousands of miles away in Turkey at Cappadocia. Sun-glistened seashores, rising and ebbing tides, and gazing at birds aloft, wings full out in a breeze we cannot see. The birth of a child. There is also a smile, a chuckle, a side-splitting guffaw, seeing strangers helping one another, even in the smallest ways, the miracles of modern medicine. Teaching my children to ride a bike. I did it, Poppy, I did it! Or teaching them to throw a ball, and a random and memorable conversation we may have with a stranger. Even if one doesn't see these as miracles, I see them as something that brings joy. And experiencing joy or bringing joy, to me, is a miracle. We don't necessarily need God to remind us of this, but sometimes we do need our kahila, our comunidad, each other. The opening lines of the prayer remain that soft arrow to my heart, reminding me to open wide all my senses, my soul, my spirit, and experience the miracles, the joys during that stroll in the mountains or at the seashore. And we, each and every one of us, can create miracles from seemingly small, minor ones, like helping someone across the street, or with their bags at a grocery store, giving tzedakah, or doing what we can to help someone and lift them out of poverty, addiction, or some difficult time they're going through in their lives. When I wonder about this, I breathe in, I breathe out, and I watch and I listen for joy. My wife's smile, her sweet sotto voce giggle as it crescendos, my daughter lost in a song, the fragrance of honeysuckle and mock orange, savoring a perfectly brewed espresso. Reliving the awe of seeing a Major League Baseball field for the first time every time I enter a stadium. The barks of sea lions, dolphins breaching the surf. The pure, almost joy, childlike joy I still feel while pedaling my bike. Soft serve ice cream with rainbow sprinkles, of course, slowly dripping down the crenellated lip of the cone, and the sweet scent of powdery sugar when opening a pack of baseball cards, and the leaves in their annual flow from verdant greens to brilliant reds, in the hues of sunbeams and sunset goldens. The list goes on and on and on. We each have our own. Wonders of wonders, miracles of miracles. As I said, I may not see them solely because God implores me to do so, but because I hope for a world where we never are sightless to the miracles in each and every one around us. So conjuntos, join me. Close your eyes. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Envision and open your eyes and see the miracles around us. Buen Shabbat.
Buen Shabbat. Power of the spoken word, the power of the experience transformed into the spoken word. The novelist Jonathan Safran Foer has said in his novel, Everything is Illuminated, touch, taste, sight, smell, hearing, memory. While Gentiles experience and process the world through the traditional senses, and use memory only as a second-order means of interpreting events. For Jews, memory is no less primary than the prick of a pin, or its silver glimmer, or the taste of the blood it pulls from the finger. The Jew is pricked by a pin and remembers other pins. It is only by tracing the pinprick back to other pinpricks, when his mother tried to fix his sleeve while his arm was still in it, when his grandfather's fingers fell asleep from stroking his great-grandfather's damp forehead, when Abraham tested the knife to be sure Isaac would feel no pain, that the Jew is able to know why it hurts. When a Jew encounters a pin, they ask, what does it remember like? Transforming our experiences into words that can be remembered is a sacred Jewish act. And when we gather as a community, it is a sacred Jewish act. And we add blessing to that sacredness when we remember those who came before us. And it does seem particularly fitting, and now I'll get a little sentimental, because we did lay to rest today Henry Butler at 102, who was a role model for so many of us. I think so many folks, maybe even our teacher of the memoir class, Henry and Olga, were the grown-ups that we all wanted to be. I got news for you. We're the grown-ups now. And so may we walk in Henry's steps. We remember this week Henry Butler, who was laid to rest today. Henry was the husband of Olga of blessed memory, the father of Ron and Stephen, father in love of Deborah and Karen, grandfather of Eric and Gil. And both Henry and his beloved wife, Olga, were past presidents of this community. As Henry liked to say, Olga was the first lady president of Temple Beth Am. And I do find it really interesting and fitting that anyone who heard Henry's voice, I think you would agree with me that it resonates, that it sounds a lot like Henry Kissinger's voice. And so what a strange Shabbat indeed that we're also remembering Henry Kissinger's passing. Also, in the last month, our community is remembering Georgia Goodmanson, mother of Craig, mother-in-law of Andrea, grandmother of Zoe, Hannah, and Abigail. We're remembering Finette Bloom, mother of Susan Clasterin, mother-in-law of Ted, and mother of Peggy Bloom, grandmother of Anna and her husband, Rabbi Jason, and Rachel and her husband, Josh, Jennifer and her husband, Andrew, Lisa and her spouse, Jim, great-grandmother to Elena, Raya, Jeremy, Sam, Julia, Riley, and James. We're also remembering Gary Seitz, husband of Sheila and father of Steve, and Charles Bentley Silverman, husband of Ellen of blessed memory, father of Leslie and Scott of blessed memory, and grandfather to Ethan. And on this Shabbat, we are remembering these loved ones whose anniversary of their death, their yard sites, fall at this time. So we're remembering David Amdor and Shirley Baker and Judith Bender, who would have loved tonight. Benjamin Bergson, Bobby Black, Philip Blacklow, Joan Blethen, Maxwell Bogan, Elaine Bornstein, Ethel Boyer, Isabel Braveman, Joan Brement, Arthur Brown, Susan Brown, Ira Cohn, Pete Combs, Sabine Cooper, Buzz Cooper, Sybil Cornell, June Droker, Pauline Duber, Helen Epstein, Earl Erdrich, Judith Udici, Rosalie Eulenberg, Frida Fagan, Mickey Firestein, Julie Frederica, Monroe Friedman, Sarah Frischer, Kitra Garrett, Benjamin Gertz, Harvey Gordon, Alan Green, Milton Gross, Jerry Hecht, Carol Hernandez, Violet Hillel, Jed Howard, Theodore Jacobs, Max Kahn, Sheila Kasperzik, Andrea Kirshendown, Emily Cohn, Edward Kotler, Barnetti Kushner, Eugene Laboth, Sam Levinson, Beatrice Lozanov, Robert Lewers, Dennis McLean, Wolf Michelson, Sarah Milstein, Roselle Pekalis, Milton Perlin, Gunter Riegner, Ernie Robinson, Paula Rose, Marilyn Schaefer, Howard Shenson, Anthony Smith, Yetta Smolensky, Daniel Stoller. And now I invite you to share the names of anyone that you'd like to include in this time of Kaddish. And of course, our hearts are also remembering all of those who have died in the war in Israel and Gaza. If you've lost a loved one in this last week, or this last month, or this last year, I'll invite you to please rise and remain standing. And if you are remembering a yard site this evening, to please rise. And then if it's your custom, we invite you to rise in body or in spirit so that we can stand in solidarity, keeping the memory of our beloveds alive as we continue with the Mourner's Kaddish, page 294. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah, Bialma divra chirute, biamlik malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dekol Beit Yisrael, bagala ubizman kari v'yimru, amen. Yehi shmei rabba mivrach le'olam almei almaya, yit barak v'yish tabak v'yit pa'ar v'yit romam v'yit naseh, V'yit hadar, v'yit haleh, v'yit halal, shemei dekudasha b'rechu, le'ela min kol birchata b'shirata, tush b'chata b'nechamata, damiran bi'alma v'imru amen, yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu Torah el v'imru amen, oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'yimru, amen. Zikronam livracha. May their memories forever be a blessing. I'll invite you to please be seated. And thank you.
And I do want to just say quickly that what we like to do is we like to share our moments of joy, of simcha, at the end of our services. And I think it's fair to say, Marilyn, thank you for bringing so much simcha, so much joy. And thank you to all of our readers of your pieces. What beautiful and evocative and thought-provoking experiences they were, so thank you. But we're wondering, maybe in the last week, or maybe in the week ahead, you've had a small event that's bringing you some joy or some reason to celebrate, or a big one. We would love to share that with those who are here. Any volunteers? I see one all the way at the back. So we're going to ask you to share your name and then what your special blessing is. It's so great to see you.
See you too. Hi, my name is Sydney, and I am currently in a Jewish art class with J Connect, the group for like 20s and 30s Jews in Seattle. And this week we made we glass etched Kiddush cups. It's so cool.
So Sydney grew up in our community, and how wonderful that you're like, now you have a Kiddush cup to celebrate Shabbat. Any other joys to celebrate? Oh, there we go, there we go. And
My name is Carol Aaron, and today our granddaughter Rowan, which means redhead in Irish, and she is indeed a flaming redhead, is 1 month old.
crowd pleaser. That was a total crowd pleaser. Top that this side of the room. Seriously, I have a superstition, and that if all the joy comes from one side of the room, it's not good luck. I'm not sure if you So anyone on this side have some joy to share? Thank you, and share your name, please.
Get this left side, some love. My name is Ellen, and I recently could move back into my home with all my belongings after a big flood.
Flood, not so joyous. Moving back in, totally joyous. So I believe it was Rabbi Joni Mitchell who said, "You don't know what you've got till it's gone." So any other joys to share? Well, I do think there actually is one more joy to share, which is that we're going to sanctify the Shabbat. And I think I'd like to invite Puddin to come up to share a little joy, and I'd like to invite Marilyn to come forward, because Puddin, don't you have just a little bit of simcha, a little bit of joy to share? Oh my God, those are gorgeous.
Come on. You may want to say something. The class just wants to take an opportunity to say thank you to our fearless leader, and for her guidance and her encouragement and belief in us, even when perhaps we don't believe that we're writing anything worthy. She's worked and given of her time and her passion about writing to everyone in the class for so many years, and we wanted, a woman deserves to have flowers at every moment and any time, and you deserve flowers today.
Oh, thank you, Quinn. Oh, thank you.
Yes.
This class gives me the great privilege of getting to know people that I wouldn't otherwise have frequent contact with, especially as they're younger than I. So it's been a joy. They are a joy. And thank you so much.
Yasher Koach.
Thank you. Yasher Koach to each of you. I wanted to get the writers up here as a group, but
You know what we'll do? We'll do the blessing over Kiddush up here, just us, and then we'll walk down, and all of the writers will join us.
all right, that
Okay.
sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
So first, we join together on page 5 as we sanctify this Shabbat with our Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh bereshit tchila lemikra'e kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'charta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. L'chaim. L'chaim.
And so, Marilyn, I'm going to invite you to put your flowers here. I'm going to invite, if you read tonight, and so I believe that is,
Mark Mayo, Gail Rosenberg,
here you go,
Beryl,
Marilyn.
As well as Puddin and Larry Katz. Did I miss?
And Larry Katz.
And Dennis.
Dennis will, and so
Mark
we're
Mayo.
going to come.
Yes.
Yep, Gail's name was mentioned.
And Dennis in
We're
that
going to
section.
invite you, if you read, to please come on up. You're going to hold the, and Marilyn, come on down. If you come on. You guys have been to services before. You know we're going to hold this. And actually, if you'll hold it, and we're going to, and if you're so comfortable, if you're not, that's totally cool. But we're going to do this in Temple Beth Am fashion, where we put our arms around someone who has their arms around someone who has their arms around someone who did an awesome reading tonight. And so we're going to do the Hamotzi together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz
b'te'avon. One last thank you to Marilyn, to Jamie Shore, who's made sure that we
So
are going
you
to be both
guys
seen
get
and
a
heard
seat
virtually as well as
over here.
online, and we're able to see Dennis, as well as our wonderful musicians, Andy, Sean, Wendy, and Marisa. They're going to help us bring it home, page 216, Sim Shalom.
Please join us.
Sim Shalom, Tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, barcheinu avinu, kulanu kechad, be'or panecha, ki be'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, Torah chayim, achavar chesed, ve'achavar hesed, tzedaka uvracha v'rachamim, v'chaim v'shalom. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, v'tov be'enecha, levarech et amcha Yisrael, b'chol עת ובכל שעה, בשלומך. שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים ורחמים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל, עמך. שבת שלום.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.